If you're in search of a lift that will fit that larger set of wheels and tires or gain you some extra ground clearance for the trail, this officially licensed Jeep 2.5-inch suspension lift kit with reservoir shocks will be a great option to consider for your 2007 to 2018 JK Wrangler. Now this will be good for the JK owner who wants a mild yet high performance lift kit to fit up to a 35-inch tire to make the Jeep more capable when you're taking it off-road, or if you just straight up want a more aggressive aesthetic to your rig. Now this kit will come with quality officially licensed Jeep components and will include everything that you need as well as more to get that height for the JK owner looking for a fully inclusive lift kit. Now, as I mentioned, this will be a full kit which will feature springs, shocks, sway bar end lengths, and all of the hardware, brackets, and spacers that you need in order to get that 2.5 inches of lift while maintaining good ride quality. Now, the combination of these springs and the shocks alone will be fine-tuned, and the addition of the reservoir will up the game when it comes to reliability and responsiveness on as well as off-road. Not only will this offer the performance that you may be looking for, but this is going to eliminate the rake and create more of a defined stance for your rig, really elevating that aesthetic. Getting into the construction, starting off with the springs, these will be high tensile linear springs offering reliability and good responsiveness to on and off-road driving. Now, the shocks included will consist of a gas pressurized reservoir design providing extended valving to keep them cooler and operating more efficiently compared to the stock one that can end up fading over time. Usually it gets squishy and you can feel that in your drive. These will also have a hard chrome OE style piston rod for great strength and a steel as well as aluminum housing or body coated in a durable black powder coat finish, and this reservoir on the outside is going to have an anodized finish that's going to resist any rusting or corrosion on both of those metals. Now, the sway bar end links will be made of a durable steel material as well with a nice silver powder coat on top. Those are also going to have high density polyurethane bushings that will outshine the factory ones when it comes to the lifespan. Now, you can also find a track bar relocation bracket in the kit that's going to pull the axle back center. That's made of heavy duty steel material with a nice black powder coat finish on that as well. And you're also going to get bump stop extensions in the kit. Now, the front bump stop extensions are going to be made of an aluminum material with a nice black powder coat again, and the rear bump stop extensions will be made of a dense plastic material, so you don't have to worry about any rusting when it comes to those. Not to mention, this kit is going to come with absolutely everything that you need as far as the hardware is concerned when it comes to getting this installed on your Jeep. Now this kit will come in at about $1,600, which in my opinion is a good price for what you're getting. Now comparing this to other choices available on the site, this kit will come with every component that you need to lift your Jeep and accommodate for that added height with high performance components that you don't see in every kit, unlike some other spacer or bare bones choices. Now this will also be officially licensed, so you can ensure that this is backed in quality by Jeep for some additional peace of mind that you're getting a solid kit. Now install will be a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. As you can probably assume, you will have to disassemble your entire suspension in order to get this on. So it's going to take you about 6 hours to get the job done with the right tools and the right setup. Now at this point, we can head over to the shop and check out a detailed breakdown of the install process step by step. So it's going to wrap it up for me. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Tools you will need for this install include an air and electric impact, assortment of ratchets, 10, 11, 13, 18, 19, 21 millimeter sockets, various extensions, clip removal tool, 11, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, and 22 millimeter wrenches, a pry bar, penetrating lubricant, and a handheld spring compressor, as well as tools not shown here, which are jack and jack stands. What's up guys, today we're going to be installing a lift kit on our Wrangler. But before we get started with the rear, we're going to send you to watch a short video on how to uninstall your factory suspension, and then we'll get started with our lift kit install.
So now we can get started in the rear. Now our first step is going to be to take off our bottom shock bolts. So I'm going to use an 18 millimeter socket and wrench to disconnect this bottom shock bolt. Now I also have the axle supported just like in the front, but we can go ahead and take that out. And this is going to give us access to that lower sway bar bolt. You might need a small pry bar just to get it out of the mount here. Now we can take out the bottom sway bar bolt using an 18 millimeter socket and wrench. Next, we can take out the bolt on our brake line bracket up on the frame here. I'm going to use the same 10mm socket that we used up front. And again, this is just going to make sure that our brake line is not damaged while we're lowering our axle. Then we can just repeat that on the other side. Next, we can disconnect our rear track bar using a 21mm socket. So once the track bar is disconnected, we can start to lower down our axle. So real quick, I'm just gonna disconnect this breather hose. You just have to pull back on it. It's just gonna be a barbed pin there. And then what we can do now is just lower down our axle. If the axle is low enough, we can just pop out our spring. And the isolator is going to come out with it.
Alrighty guys, welcome back. Now that we've shown you how to remove your factory suspension, we're ready to go ahead and start with our lift install. And our first step is going to be to install our new bump stops onto our axle. And we're going to use our supplied 2 5/16 bolts, 2 flat washers, and lock nuts on each bump stop. So we'll go ahead and get those loosely in place and then we'll tighten them down. One thing to note is the orientation. Your outer triangle here will face the rear of the vehicle. So we'll go ahead and install those. So we'll go ahead and get our rear bolt in place first, and then go ahead and locate that into our hole. And grab our washer and our nut. You may have to lift up on it to get it in place. It's kind of tricky. Get it to start threading on, and then we'll go ahead and get our front bolt in place. And we'll go ahead and set our front bolt in. Get our washer and our nut ready. Again, you might have to lift up on it to get it in place. Okay, once we have those threaded in, we can go ahead and get ready to tighten those down. So for our front bolt, we can get to it using our 13mm socket and our ratchet. Go ahead and slide that in place. And for our rear, we'll have to use 2 13mm wrenches to go ahead and tighten that down. You want to get it as tight as you can by hand first. And go ahead and finish it off with your wrench. So now we're ready to go ahead and install our new springs, and we're going to reuse the top cap here off of our factory spring, and you can see the indent of where your factory spring was, and you want to line that up with your new spring. And we may need to lower our rear down even more to go ahead and get our new spring in. And you may even find your breathing tube for your axle is getting a little stretched, so you can go ahead and just pop that off. And you can extend that if you feel more comfortable with an add-on adapter. Go ahead and lower this down, keeping an eye on our lines and everything else to make sure nothing is getting stretched. We'll go ahead and give it a check. And you want to make sure the bottom of your spring lines up in the correct orientation as well. And then we'll go ahead and raise our differential back up. So once you get your bump stop and your spring loosely in place on this side, you can go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. Next, we can go ahead and install our new sway bar end links. So to do that, we're going to mount these on the outside here. Use our provided 19mm nut to mount our top joint to our sway bar. We'll get that hand tight, and then we can go ahead and reuse the factory hardware to mount our bottom of our sway bar end link to our axle. And you may have to bring it down here. And you want to make sure your grease fitting for your serviceability is facing out towards your caliper, so you do have access to that while you're on the road. Next, we can go ahead and use our 19mm socket and extension on our impact to go ahead and tighten down our top bolt. And then we can go ahead and use an 18mm socket and extension on our impact and an 18mm wrench to tighten down our bottom bolt. And once you've got that done on this side, you can go ahead and repeat this process on your other side. Next, we can go ahead and mount our top mounting bolt for our shock using our supplied bolt, 2 washers, and a lock nut. We'll go ahead and slide that into place and get our nut and washer on. And then we can go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. So next we're ready to go ahead and install our track bar drop bracket. And in order to do that, we're going to need to release our lower control arm here. So we're going to use our 21mm socket on our impact and a 21mm wrench to remove the bolt, and we'll go ahead and pry that out of the way. And we'll go ahead and remove our bolt, and our control arm just swings out of the way. Now we can go ahead and get our drop bracket into place. Go ahead and slide that on. Now it may be a little tight because you have your bump stop in the way. If you feel the need to, you can go ahead and pull that back off. But it will work while it's still on there. Just take some finagling. And once you've got that lined up, we'll go ahead and install our supplied bolt, flat washer, and flange nut. And there are 2 bolt holes. So we'll go ahead and install our first one here. And get our second one in place. And then we'll go ahead and install our flange nuts on the back side. And we're going to leave those loose for now so we can mount the rest of our hardware here. So now for our original mounting point, we're going to use our supplied bolt, 2 flat washers, and a lock nut along with a sleeve that goes in the middle here. So we'll get this lined up. So once you've got your bolt lined up, we can go ahead and insert our sleeve here. This may be a little bit of a tight fit. Go ahead and slide it over. So now that you've gotten your bolt through, it is a bit of a struggle, but once you finagle it in there, it will go. We can go ahead and install our washer and our lock nut on the back side. We'll go ahead, slide our washer on, get our lock nut in there. This is kind of a blind spot, but it goes directly behind this tab here on the axle of your original track bar mounting location. Now we can go ahead and tighten this down using our 21mm socket on our impact and a 22mm wrench for your nut on the back side. Once you have that done, we can go ahead and tighten down our other 2 supporting bolts. So now we can go ahead and tighten down our 2 supporting bolts, and we'll use our 14mm wrench for the front and our 14mm socket and extension on our impact for our nuts. And you may have to swap out for this top one because of your axle housing. So we'll go ahead and swap that. We can go ahead and install our track bar onto our drop bracket using our supplied bolt, 2 flat washers, and a lock nut. we'll go ahead and swing this up into place. Go ahead and line that up. Now you may need to pry it up a little bit to get the bolt to go all the way through. Once you've got your bolt all the way through, we can go ahead and install our washer and our lock nut on the back side. May need to rotate your spring a little bit to get it out of the way. And we're going to snug this down for now, but we will end up torquing all these bolts when we're under load once we drop it back down to the ground. We can go ahead and snug this down using our 21mm socket on our impact, 22mm wrench. And again, just snug for now, we'll torque those later. We can go ahead and reinstall our lower control arm. Just slide that back into place. Go ahead and reinstall your factory hardware. Now we can tighten that back down using our 21mm wrench and our 21mm socket on our impact. Now we can go ahead and install our brake line drop bracket, reusing our factory hardware for the original mounting point. Then we're going to add a nut and bolt in for our new mounting point for our line. So we'll go ahead and thread that in. And we can go ahead and tighten that down using our 10mm socket on our ratchet. Next, we'll use our supplied bolt and washer on the front side here. Go ahead and install that. Then we will use a flat washer and a lock nut for the back side. And we can tighten these down using our 11mm socket on our ratchet and our 11mm wrench on the back side. And once you've got that done over here, you can go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. So before we move on to installing our new front suspension, we're going to send you to watch a short video on how to uninstall your factory system, and we'll see you when you get back.
So the first couple of steps of this install include getting the Jeep up in the air, whether you're on a jack and jack stand, or if you are on a lift like I am with a couple of pole jacks. You want to make sure that you're supporting the axle because we will have to lower it down. You also want to make sure that the front wheels and tires are off, and if you are on a jack and jack stands, I would recommend chalking the rear wheels. But our first step is going to be to take off our sway bar end links, or at least to just disconnect them from the axle. So we can take off the bottom bolt for our sway bar end link. We don't necessarily have to take off the top, considering that we just need to disconnect this from the axle so we can lower it down. So I'm going to take an 18mm swivel socket on the passenger side, and then I'm going to take an 18mm wrench and we can take that off. Then we can do the same thing on the other side. Next, we can disconnect our front track bar using a 21mm socket. It's going to be a flag nut on the back. That is going to shift the axle a little bit, but it's going to allow us to drop our axle. Next, we can remove our lower shock bolt using an 18mm socket and wrench. Now, in order to get this out, you may have to adjust the height of the axle in order to loosen that bolt up. Now, the other thing that we want to make sure to do while we're over on this side is disconnect our brake line bracket. We have one up at the top on the frame and one down on the spring perch. I'm going to use a 10mm socket for both of those, but I'm also going to use my impact wrench for this top one. I'm going to make sure to save these. So what we can do at this point is kind of just wiggle our shock out at the bottom there. And then just pull out our brake line bracket. This is just gonna give it enough slack so when we drop our axle, we're not damaging this brake line because we definitely don't wanna do that. If this does get damaged in the process, you will need to replace them. So once we are finished with the brake line and the shock over on this side, we can do the same thing on the other side, and then we can start lowering our axle. At this point, what we can do is start lowering down our axle so we can take out our springs. So I'm just gonna lower my pull jacks here. And we just want to make sure that it's even. We're keeping an eye on our brake lines, even though they are disconnected at the bracket. You also want to keep an eye on the breather hose on the differential. I usually just like to pop that off. There's no clip or anything. It's just a tube that you can just pull back. And then we can just lower this down. And you'll see the spring start to separate at the top. You can usually just do this one by one, but once you have enough room, you can wiggle the spring out on either side. Or you can even kind of rotate the spring, move the sway bar if you need to. And even pull down on the axle if you need to. So last but not least, once we have the springs out, we're just gonna take out this isolator as well. And we can do the same thing on the other side.
Alrighty guys, welcome back. Now that we've shown you how to uninstall your factory suspension, we're gonna go ahead and start installing our new upgraded lift kit. So our first step is going to be to install our new lower perch for our springs. Now what you're gonna wanna do is grab your new perch and put it onto the lower part of where your spring perch from your factory is, and you're going to need to grab a Sharpie and drop that down into your perch and mark out the spot where you will need to drill a 3/8 hole so we can get our hardware in to mount it. Now ours already has been drilled, so we're not going to do that, but that will be your first step in installing your springs. So now that we have that done, we're going to go ahead and install our lower perch. To do that, we're going to use our supplied bolts, 2 flat washers, and a flange nut for each one. We'll go ahead and slide that in, and we'll go ahead and install our flat washer and flange nut on the bottom here. And to tighten this down, we'll go ahead and use our 14mm wrench. Now this is a flange nut on the bottom, so if you get it hand tight, it should grab and one wrench should suffice. We'll go ahead, tighten that down, and then go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. So you may find it very difficult to get the new spring in if you can't lower your front differential low enough to get it over the new perch and up into place. So what you can do is go to your local auto parts store and rent a handheld spring compressor like we have here. Most of them are looking a little different, but basically the principle is the same. You hook them onto your springs, clamp them down tightly, and go ahead and tighten them up, and it will compress your spring. Obviously we've gone ahead and done ours already. So we'll go ahead and install our spring. And you may find you need to compress it more and more. So ours was a bit of a struggle, so we went ahead and got it on. But if you use a lot of caution with handheld spring compressors, I can't stress that enough, go ahead and compress your spring enough to get it up over your top perch and your bottom perch, get it into place, and then you can loosen up your spring compressor and set your spring. So for orientation purposes, the bottom of your last coil should line up with the end of where your factory coil rested in the bottom perch here, and your factory upper isolator should have remained in place. And we'll go ahead and make sure that's in line and reuse that for your upper isolator for your spring, obviously. Now that we have our spring in place, we can go ahead and mount our new shock. And to do that, we're going to start with the upper portion. Now it comes with 2 rubber mounts here and 2 big washers, so you're going to have it oriented washer, rubber mount, body, rubber mount, washer, nut. So we'll go ahead and insert that up in and get our upper section installed. And we can go ahead and get our nut into place. And we'll go ahead and get that hand tight for now. And then we can go ahead and raise our axle up and go ahead and get our bottom shock mount in place. So now that we have our upper mounting nut for our shock hand tight, we can go ahead and raise our axle up and get our lower mounting point in place. Then go ahead and reuse your factory hardware from your shock. Slide that in. Go ahead and install our nut. And then we can go ahead and tighten this down using our 18mm socket on a ratchet and an 18mm wrench. Now that we have that tight, we can go ahead and tighten down our top mount. And now to tighten down our top mounting nut, we're going to go ahead and use our 19mm wrench. And once you have that tightened down, we can go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. So next we'll come out to our sway bar and we'll grab our rear sway bar end links from the factory and we're going to move those to our front and they're going to be in place of our factory fronts. So we'll just go ahead and insert that and get our nut on our top part here. And then we can go ahead and line it up our bottom mounting point here. So once you have your nut onto your top part of your end link, we can go ahead and line our bottom part up. You may need to move the sway bar a little bit, but it does move freely. We'll reuse the factory hardware. Go ahead and insert that and reinstall our nut. We'll go ahead and tighten this down using our 18mm socket on our impact and a 19mm wrench on the back side here to hold it in place. And then we can go ahead and tighten down our bottom mount using an 18mm socket on our impact and an 18mm wrench. And then we'll go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. So now we can go ahead and install our drop bracket for our brake line. So to do that, we're going to grab our bracket and reuse our factory hardware to mount it to this point. And go ahead and use your 10mm socket on your ratchet to tighten that down. Then we can go ahead and massage our brake line down into place. And we'll use our supplied bolt, 2 flat washers, and a lock nut to go ahead and fasten that in place. Bolt in, get our flat washer in on the back side, and then install our lock nut. Then we can go ahead and tighten that down using our 11mm socket on our ratchet and 11mm wrench. Next, we can go ahead and reinstall our lower brake line tab. And go ahead and get that in the slot on the back side, and you may need a flathead screwdriver or a small pry bar to go ahead and work it back into place if it is stuck. So now we can go ahead and reinstall the bolt for our lower brake line bracket here. We'll go ahead and put that back in. And then we'll tighten that down using our 10mm socket on our ratchet. And once you've got your drop bracket and your lower brake line bracket installed, you can go ahead and repeat this process on the other side. And then we can go ahead and put the wheels back on, lower the car down, use the steering wheel to reattach the front track bar, as well as use the weight of the vehicle to get our rear shocks lined up and go ahead and do our final mounting on them and torque our rear control arms down. So now we've got our wheels on and the vehicle is ready to be lowered down, so we can use the weight of the vehicle to go ahead and mount our lower shock mounts in the rear, and then we can go ahead and use the steering system to realign our front track bar. So we're going to start with the rear shocks, and this is when it's good to grab a buddy to operate your jack or lift as we have here, and go ahead and lower the car so you can keep an eye on your shock locations and make sure they are mounted correctly. So there's a couple things you want to keep an eye for when doing this. One is for your springs, to make sure they are still sitting correctly, because they are under no tension until you drop the wheels onto the ground. So you want to make sure they're lined up, as well as your rear shock lower mounting points. And at this point, communication is key with whoever is operating your jack or lift as we have here. So anything crazy, go ahead and call it out, tell your friend to stop, and adjust from there. So we'll go ahead and get started. And we'll get under here. All right, now you can tell your jack or lift operator to slowly begin lowering the vehicle down once you have your springs lined up. Go ahead and slowly lower. Stop. Double check. Okay, go ahead and slowly lower. Okay, stop. Okay, now that you have your springs aligned, you can go ahead and move to our lower shock mounting points. Okay, go ahead and slowly lower. And stop. Just a hair more. Okay, stop. Just a hair more. Keep going a little bit. Right there. And we can go ahead and see where we need to adjust. Go ahead and get our bolt through. Okay, once we have that side through, we'll loosely install our nut. And we can go ahead and take a look at our other side and do the same thing. Now that we have our lower shock mounting bolts in place, we can go ahead and tighten those down using our 18mm socket on our impact and an 18mm wrench. And go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. So now once we have our lower shock bolts tightened, we can come back up to our upper shock mounts and go ahead and tighten those down using our 16mm socket on our ratchet and a 17mm wrench for your nut. And once you have that tightened down, you can go ahead and repeat this process for the other side, as well as reinstall your breather tube for your axle once you go ahead and drop this all the way down. So you just slip it back over this fitting here. And you're good to go. So now we're ready to go ahead and reattach our front track bar. And for this, you want to have the vehicle on the ground and go ahead and grab a buddy so he can operate the steering wheel and use your steering system to go ahead and line up your track bar. So we'll get under here and grab our factory hardware and go ahead and get ready to reinstall it. So you can see where it lines up, and if you need to make any adjustments. This is right down here on your passenger side at the lower track bar mount on your axle. And it looks like we're in good shape for our alignment. And we'll go ahead and slide that through. And you may need to have your buddy wiggle the steering wheel just a little bit. Go ahead and give it a little bit of a turn. Corey, go ahead and turn it just a little bit. Other way. There we go. Okay. Now that we have our hardware through, we can go ahead and grab our factory catch nut. Go ahead and get that lined up. This can be a bit of a tedious process to get this nut back on. And we can go ahead and tighten this down using our 21mm socket and extension on our impact. So now once you've gotten everything tightened down, the vehicle's on the ground, everything's in place, you want to make sure that everything is double checked and tightened and torqued to spec. The rear lower control arms are 125 foot-pounds. And everything else is good to go. Your wheels are back on, and it's definitely recommended to get an alignment after installing this lift. Alrighty guys, that about wraps up our review and install of our officially licensed Jeep 2.5-inch suspension lift kit with reservoir shocks for your 07 to 18 Jeep Wrangler JK. Thanks for watching, and as always, for everything Wrangler, keep it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.